Court, tribunal, judiciary, they all sound kind of similar, don't they? Well, the world of law is absolutely packed with specific language, but figuring out the key differences is actually way easier than you might think. Today, we're going to break down some of the most basic terms you need to know. Let's dive right in. So you've definitely heard these words thrown around before, but do you know the precise difference between them? Tell you what, let's treat this as a quick quiz. Let's see how you do. Our guide for today's challenge is this fantastic little exercise on basic legal terminology. We're going to work through some of its key definitions to build up our legal vocabulary, one step at a time. All right, first up, let's talk about the institutions and the people who run them. Here is your very first definition. Okay, think about it for a sec. An official body, it tries criminals, it resolves disputes. This is probably the most common legal term you can possibly think of. What is it? If you said court, you are absolutely correct. This is the classic setting for all legal drama, everything from traffic tickets to major criminal trials. But what about something a little more specialized? Now, here's our next one. Notice the slightly different wording here. Appointed to make a judgment or inquiry. It sounds a lot like a court, but it often handles more specific kinds of issues. Any ideas what it could be? And the answer is a tribunal. Here's a good way to think about it. If a court is like a general hospital that handles all sorts of cases, a tribunal is more like a specialized clinic. It's a body set up to handle very specific types of disputes. Think employment issues or housing problems, usually outside of the main court system. Okay, last one for this section. Now, we're not talking about a single person or a single place, but the entire group, the whole collective. What do we call a country's body of judges? That would be the judiciary. It's the whole branch of government that administers justice, and it's made up of all the judges who preside over the courts we just talked about. So here's the key takeaway. The judiciary is the collective group, and judges are the individuals within it. Great. Now that we know the people and the places, let's move on to the actual rules they all work with. What do we call the laws themselves? Okay, here's your next definition. This refers to those specific written rules that are formally passed by a government body, like a parliament or a Congress. The word we're looking for is legislation. Just think of it as the official written output from the lawmakers. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Just a little nuance of the English language. You can talk about a law or many laws. It's countable. But legislation is what we call an uncountable noun. It refers to a whole body of laws. It's a subtle difference, but a really important one. All right, let's zoom out a bit. What's the big picture term for the entire framework? We're talking the system of rules, the institutions, the enforcement, the whole shebang. And that is the legal system. This is what shows us how all those individual pieces we've been talking about, the courts, the judges, the legislation, all fit together to form one big, cohesive structure for a society. Final round. We've got the places and we've got the rules. But who are the professionals that make this system actually function day in and day out? Let's find out. Now, this one might seem easy, but I want you to think about the most general, all-encompassing term for the people who work in this field. Yes, it's lawyers, and this is a great point from our source material, this is a very wide term. It doesn't just refer to one specific job title, but to all the professionals working in the legal profession, from solicitors all the way up to judges. Okay, last definition of the day. Having rules is one thing, but you need someone to actually make sure people follow them, right? What do we call the organization that's responsible for that enforcement? A law enforcement agency. And the most common example, as it says right here, is of course the police, but it can also include other groups that are tasked with making sure all that legislation is being followed. So, we've pretty much nailed the vocabulary, but that brings us to a much bigger question. Why do we even have all of this stuff in the first place? We've defined all the parts, but why does this whole complicated machine even exist at all? Well, our source material gives us a very clear, very logical answer. It all starts with the basic need to control behavior in a society. And to do that, you have to create official rules. That's our legislation. But those rules can be complex, so you need experts, lawyers, and a judiciary to interpret and apply them. And finally, you need a law enforcement agency to make sure the rules are actually being followed. See, it's a complete, interconnected system. But let's end on a sobering, really practical note from our source. For all its necessity, the legal system is far from perfect. This seems to be a universal truth. Getting involved with it takes a lot of time and a lot of money. And that leaves us with a really big question to ponder. If this system is so essential for society, but it's also so expensive and difficult to access, how do we bridge that gap to make sure justice is truly available for everyone? That's all for this explainer. Thanks for joining me.